Hi, this is Eric from longboxreview.com, and this is Breaking Late News, where I talk about the headlines that have captured my attention from the past, several weeks, I suppose. First up, unfortunately, is a very sad bit of news. I'm sure everyone is aware of the attack on the Charlie Hebdo magazine in Paris, France. You've probably seen the hashtag Je suis Charlie all over Twitter. I'm not going to go into the details of it. You can easily Google it and find out all the details about this horrific act. What bothered me about this situation was how unsecure I felt. And I certainly don't mean to compare what I do on this podcast or at the blog with anything that the satirists at the magazine do. But at the same time, any crazy person out there with a gun and intent could decide one day that they didn't like what I said and track me down and try to kill me. Or, anybody that puts themselves out there publicly in whatever fashion that is. And it really bothers me that there are people out there like that. But you never know what might set someone off. And this was compounded for me personally just a few days later after the attack in France. Because in my sleepy little hamlet, there was a triple homicide. This was just, at the time of this recording, this is 2 days ago, where I'm at home. I'm actually researching the headlines that I wanted to talk about. And then I see a tweet from the local newspaper announcing this shooting. And as time went on during the day, we got more and more details. And basically it was some guy who, for some reason, and we don't have the details yet, it's only been 2 days, just went apparently, in my mind, he just went crazy. And he killed his mother, allegedly killed his adoptive mother. Some other guy who managed some apartments here in town, and he also shot a kid who was in the office at the same time as this guy, and then went and killed the manager of our local Arby's restaurant. And we don't know why he went off like this. The guy is caught, but it's just this senselessness, this fear. My wife and my daughter both separately talked to me about this, and they both said this, that they felt they were afraid and they didn't feel secure in their own town. The attack at the Arby's restaurant actually happened in the afternoon after the lunch rush. Fortunately, one could assume that had it been earlier in the day, then maybe more people might have gotten hurt. And then the next day, on Sunday, my wife and I were out grocery shopping, doing those mundane things that you do even after a tragedy like that occurs in your area. And I think we both just felt uneasy. So that situation just compounded what I was feeling about the Charlie Hebdo situation. I don't know. I'm not sure what else to say about it, other than, like I said, it was a senseless act, despicable act. And I started wondering, should I be censoring myself to some degree? And then I think, well, no, we shouldn't be censoring ourselves just because of the threat of violence, because then the terrorists win, right? But at the same time, I don't know, it's a hard question to ponder. I mean, it's really easy for me, really, in my safe little basement recording studio, but I don't know. I guess I'm just wrestling with this, and I just wanted to talk it out a little bit. It's just sad. But let's talk about things that are not so sad, at least in our world of comic books and things related to comic books. I'm sure you've heard by now that the Daredevil Netflix series got a debut date, and that is April 10th, 2015. And based on what I've read, they're going to release all the episodes on that day. So that's about a month before the Avengers Age of Ultron movie opens up. So you get that nice little attention, I guess. Unfortunately, I recently read that the Jessica Jones, the AKA Jessica Jones series may be pushed back. I thought that it was supposed to come out in 2015, sometime during 2015, but apparently Netflix's Ted Sarandos, I don't know how he says that, how his last name is pronounced. Anyway, it may not come out this year. He talked about how what they plan to do with the 5 Marvel shows is that they would come out roughly a year apart. So the quote is here, I'm looking at Newsarama, that could be the next series could come as early as 8 months, and others could be 15 months apart. So roughly a year. So we may not get to see Jessica Jones, that Netflix series, as soon as we thought, which is unfortunate, because that's really the one that I'm looking forward to seeing the most, I think, out of all of them. My love of Daredevil notwithstanding. So hopefully we'll get to see that sooner rather than later. In other news, IDW acquires Top Shelf. So Top Shelf Productions will become an imprint of IDW. I find that really interesting because IDW was not a publisher that I really paid much attention to until recently. To me, IDW was the company that got all of the licensed properties, and I don't typically buy a lot of that stuff. Although when they announced their Star Trek comic, which tied into the J.J. Abrams reboot universe, I decided to give it a try, and I've really enjoyed it. It's been a pretty good comic from the get-go and has maintained sufficient quality in story, if not in art. So now I'm looking at IDW more and more. They recently announced a Millennium miniseries, and of course I'm going to get that because I was a huge fan of the Millennium TV series from the late 90s on Fox. And so when they brought in or re-brought in, I don't remember now, the X-Files brand, given that the X-Files and Millennium universes actually do coincide with one another, we now get the Millennium miniseries. So I'm really excited about that. So with Top Shelf though, they get most, the big name here is Alan Moore, of course, with the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. But based on what I know, Alan Moore will continue his work with Top Shelf and, of course, IDW. Who knows if that will change or not, given Mr. Moore's volatility. But besides Alan Moore, there's a bunch of other people whose work is part of the Top Shelf brand. For example, there's been some buzz about Congressman John Lewis's, I guess it's a bestseller called March, and the catalog includes Craig Thompson's Blankets, which was an amazing graphic novel. If you haven't read that, I really recommend it. And Jeff Lemire's Essex County is part of this. So there's the press release was talking about how IDW has been looking for to increase their line, and Top Shelf is something that complements them. I'm not sure how that is exactly, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm really curious how this will turn out and what Top Shelf will bring to IDW other than the name recognition in some cases. But what will come out of this partnership that is new and interesting as opposed to what has come out before that is absorbed? Speaking of looking back, the 2014 sales information came out. This was through Diamond, and I just wanted to run through that real quick. So despite DC's push for the New 52 and the success of it early on, now we're 3 years later, over 3 years later, I guess, and Marvel is still number one, with DC being number two in dollar share and unit share. But Image Comics, no surprise there, is number three, with IDW being number four, and then followed by Dark Horse, Dynamite, Boom, and then the other publishers category. The top 10 books of 2014, I guess that's what this means, this ranking that I'm looking at. Yep, I just didn't see the title. These are the top 10 comic books of 2014. Number 10, Superior Spider-Man, number 31. Number 9, Death of Wolverine, number 3. Number 8, Death of Wolverine, number 2. Number 7, Original Sin, number 1. Number 6, Thor, number 1, that's good. I like to see that. 5 and 4 are both Death of Wolverine issues, number 4 and number 1, respectively. Number 3, Rocket Raccoon, number 1. No big surprise there. Number 2, Walking Dead, number 132. I'm not sure why that is. I read Walking Dead in trades, so I'm not caught up on that series. And so I imagine there was some big revelation during that issue. And finally, number 1 is Amazing Spider-Man, number 1. Not a big surprise there at all. Even at $5.99. Wow. In fact, the only issue on here that is $2.99 is the Walking Dead issue. The rest are either $3.99, $4.99, or there are 2 issues on here listed at $5.99, the Superior Spider-Man number 31 being the other one. And maybe that's why Marvel is number 1 in the dollar share. The 2014 top 10 graphic novels and trade paperbacks. Wow. So basically, this is just a bunch of Saga trades and Walking Dead trades. Pretty much, the top 6 are 3 Walking Dead and 3 Saga trades. That's interesting. Number 7 is Sex Criminals, the first trade of that, that's very good. That's one of my favorite series right now. And then number 8 is another Walking Dead. Number 9, finally DC gets on the list with Batman, The Court of Owls. That's the trade version. And rounding out number 10 is Saga. Interestingly, though still number 2, DC put out more comics in 2014 with over 1,100 comics compared to Marvel's just slightly over 950 comics. Image is third, of course, with just over 700, and IDW with over 500. Anyway, I don't tend to pay too much attention to the sales figures, but I find it interesting to take a look at the way things ended up at the end of the year. The big news recently, however, is the information coming out of the Image Expo. And so just as last year, Image released a bunch of new titles that would be coming out in 2015, or at least starting in 2015. So I thought I'd run down those real quick. And these, I may be reading a bit from the press release from Image. So first up is AD, After Death. This is by Scott Snyder and artist Jeff Lemire. So theoretically, this is coming out in November 2015. AD After Death will be set in a near future where death has been cured and one man must come to grips with what comes next. I'm not too excited about this. I passed over Scott Snyder's Witches, although I'm still reading his Batman. And Jeff Lemire as an artist is just not something that entices me at all. I'm just not a big fan of his style, that's all. So we'll see. I'll probably wait and see what the buzz is, and maybe I'll pick up the trade on that. Next is Black Road, which is Brian Wood's return to the Viking genre since his series Northlanders came to an end. This is with Gary Brown on art and Lauren Affey doing colors. So this is set in the Viking Age Norway. Follows a character named Magnus the Black, a fixer for the Christian Church who loses a Roman official to bandits on the infamous Black Road. Heading north to fix the problem and complete his contract, he uncovers a secret, something so big it threatens to change the balance of power in all of Europe. But with one foot in the world of the pagans and the other in that of the church, who can trust where his loyalties lie? So if you are a fan of Brian Wood's Northlanders, this might be a way to get your Viking fix. Actually, that does sound kind of interesting, although I'd never read Northlanders, but sometimes co-host Travis did, and he was a big fan of that series. The premise of this sounds pretty good. I'll have to take a look at the preview images because I'm not familiar with Gary Brown's work. Oh wait, so Gary Brown worked on The Massive, which I did read the first arc of, and Iron Patriot, which I didn't. So not too bad, I guess. Anyway, I'll take a look at it. There's no time frame here listed. Third is I Hate Fairyland. This is by artist Scotty Young and Jean-Francois Boulot. Oh boy. Jean-Francois. We'll just go with that one. So they're going to introduce us to Gertrude, a snarky, slightly deranged 40-year-old with a battle axe who happens to be trapped in a Shirley Temple-esque body and confined to the Technicolor fun world that is Fairyland. I Hate Fairyland is an all-new series full of morbid, dark humor and snark, perfect for fans of Invader Zim and Fight Club. Actually, that sounds kind of fun. Although if it's Scotty Young doing what we normally see Scotty Young doing, I don't know that I could read an entire series with that. I mean, yeah, the stuff he does is cute, you know, the little pint-sized characters and whatnot, but it's cute in small doses. So again, I'll have to take a look at that and see if I'm really interested in it or not. But the premise sounds interesting. There are two titles here next, Island and 8 House. I think that's how, or maybe it's Infinite House. I'm not quite sure. It says 8 House. It says the number 8 and House together as the title. Anyway, Emma Rios announced these projects. Both are collaborations with Brandon Graham, and they are due out in 2015. June of 2015, we'll see Island, which is a 72-page monthly magazine. So I guess it's, kind of like, what was the one comic creator? What was the one that Jimmy Palmiotti did? That was this kind of reminds me of that, just based on the description. There's this article I'm looking at. There's no other information about 8 House. So, oh, here we go. Found a different article. 8 House. It was announced at last year's Image Expo, I guess. Let's see. This is a quote from Brandon Graham. You'll get 4 issues of one storyline, then 4 issues of another storyline by a different team. Oh, more about the Island magazine. So the subtitle is Comics Magazine for Comics. Okay. Graham described it as heavy metal, but for less of a teenage boy audience. That's interesting. From Chip Zdarsky comes Kaptara, I believe. This is with illustrator Kagan McLeod. The story of Kaptara follows Keith Kanga, a young bioengineer flung across the universe onto a strange planet filled with weird danger. And if he doesn't get home, then Earth, the place where you live, is doomed. So I wasn't too keen or too impressed with the first part of that description, but that tagline at the end that does pique my interest a little bit. Again, I'll have to check out the art and see what else comes out of this as far as information. Kieran Gillen has another series coming out along with David LaFuente, Jim Rossignol, and Ricardo Venancio, I believe. This is called The Ludocrats. This is a decade-in-the-making, opulent, fantastical comedy, said the writer. This is a book which has hyperbole as its baseline and considers the impossible as an aim only fitting for underachievers. It'll change your life, primarily by letting you own a comic called The Ludocrats, where Baron Otto von Subertan and Professor Hades 0K are the last defenders of a ludicrous aristocracy against the insipid forces of normalization. Blah. I say, I love Kieran Gillen's work on Wicked and Divine and what I've read of Phonogram, and the Young Avengers, of course, too. But when I read descriptions like that, I just go, what the hell is this about? This is just you using a bunch of words that really tell me nothing. Although I do like the names of the characters. So not really interested right now, but we'll see. Something I am interested in, just based on this preview image or preview cover image, I'm not sure what this is. This is Monstrous from writer Marjorie Liu. I think that's how she pronounces her last name. And Sana Takeda from Ms. Marvel. So this is this is an ongoing fantastic adventure set in an alternate 1900s Asia, where we are transported to the early 1900s, like I said, where immense leviathans roam the earth, wielding unimaginable powers that many have long desired to exploit. When a teenage girl with a mysterious past forms a tenuous psychic bond with the most dangerous of all the leviathans, she becomes the target of both human and otherworldly authorities who will stop at nothing to possess her, to control the lord of all the leviathans. What they don't count on is the courage of the girl herself and the fact that she is slowly becoming more than human. Anyway, so there you go. That's how you write a description of a new comic. You give us a little bit of what it's about. And then like I said, that preview image, the promo image, I guess that's a better way to put it, by Sana Takeda, looks really cool. Just the artwork, the colors, it's really impressive. So I'm already intrigued. And the promo image says summer 2015. Coming this spring, whatever spring means exactly, is No Mercy. This is by writer Alex DeCampi, along with Carla Speed McNeil and Jen Manley Lee. And the description reads, "It was just a trip before college, build schools in a Central American village, get to know some of the other freshmen. What could go wrong? After tragedy strikes, these once privileged American teens must find their way home in a cruel landscape that at best doesn't like them and at worst actively wants to kill them. No phones, no passports, no mercy." It's not my cup of tea, at least not from this description. I don't need a description here. We get one. It's a one-liner, but Paper Girls is the story of 4 12-year-old newspaper delivery girls who experience something extraordinary one day. And that's all we're told about this. But it doesn't matter because this is by Brian K. Vaughan and artist Cliff Chang. So, automatic buy. Kieran Gillen is busy doing, along with Jamie McKelvey, doing the next Phonogram story arc that explores Emily Astor's origins. Now, I've actually only read I want to say preview. That's not the right term. An excerpt, I'll say, a digital excerpt of one of the Phonogram stories from Comixology, and I really, really liked it. And all I've heard about this series is how good it really is. I do actually have a Phonogram trade on my bookshelf waiting to be read, and so I'm anxious to take a look at that. Let's see, the actual description of this new volume is Emily Astor's the hyper-acerbic cover queen whose one-liners are sharper than her fringe. She's been the one people love and love to quote. In this new chapter of the series, readers discover how she got that way and where it got her. She sold half her personality for power. This is what happens when that Faustian deal catches up with her and what that half her personality has been doing all these years. Of course, that means that, at least this is what I've heard, Jamie McKelvey will not be doing the art on some issues of The Wicked and the Divine. I know some people are not happy about that, but you get a new Phonogram. Next up, Plutona is from writer Jeff Lemire and artist Emmy Lennox, and colorist Jordi Belair. To explore the nature of friendship and the line between good and evil in this series, Plutona follows the story of 5 suburban kids who make a shocking discovery while exploring the woods one day after school. The body of the world's greatest superhero, Polera, laying dead among the mud and grass. So this is a take on Stand By Me, I suppose, with a superhero bent. It'd be interesting to see Emmy Lennox do something other than what I am familiar with, which is just her collection called Emmytown. I'm wondering if it'll be like that style. I kind of assume it won't be, but something old is new again. Pretty Deadly from Kelly Sue DeConnick and Emma Rios will start its second story arc of the, as it says here, ethereal fantasy western story. In the second story arc of Pretty Deadly, the mantle of death has fallen to a little girl, Sissy, who, along with her tattered band of reapers, is tasked with gathering souls whose time has come or come and passed. An old woman has a dying request. Her son has been missing for more than a year, gone east, and from there to fight in the trenches overseas. She wants to see the boy one last time before she passes. And so death-faced Ginny is dispatched through clouds of mustard gas to find the young man, but between her and her quarry, atop bitter black mount of 20 hands, sits the Reaper of War himself. See, now that sounds really intriguing. And despite the fact that I heard that Pretty Deadly is pretty good, I haven't picked it up yet. So mostly because I wasn't quite sure what the darn thing was about. But given this description, I may have to go pick up the trade of the first story arc, or maybe trades. I'm not sure how many issues there are of that comic, and maybe jump on board on this new version. Here's another one that I think I may just have to pick up just based on the person involved alone, and this is Revengeance from Darwin Cook. It's his first fully creator-owned project, and this is hitting in June of 2015. This book is a psychological thriller with darkly humorous overtones. When Joe Malarkey, there you go, there's the humorous overtone right there, is faced with a criminal tragedy, he sets out to make things right on his own. What follows is Joe's odyssey through the underside of the city and the madness that seems to drive his crazy world. So that's one of those, again, one of those descriptions that doesn't do a whole lot for me, but considering that it's Darwin Cook, and this is his story, not him telling somebody else's story in his wonderful art. Like I said, I may have to pick this up. Eric Canetti and John Suey are doing Run, Love, Kill. This is a take on sci-fi and action-centric storytelling. They'll be joined by designer and color artist Leonardo Olea, with Manu Fernandez providing eye-catching CGI build models for the covers. Never heard of someone doing such a thing for a comic cover. This is slated for spring of this year. The story follows a wanted woman in hiding named Rain Ashiro. The narrative style will prominently feature two very different but significantly connected moments throughout her life. The past, which will explore her history as an impressionable student, an abiding soldier, and a wanted fugitive. And the present, which will show her as she is now and how she copes with and runs away from the decisions made in her past. At its core, the story is an exploration of choices, both good and bad, and now how her choices have formed her into the person she has and will become. Set against a background of a futuristic world as only artist Kaneda can imagine, Rain has just 24 hours to escape a barricaded city while trying to evade a military force determined to either capture or kill her. I'm not too big on this the exploration of choices, both good and bad, and the past and the present. I mean, that's a story. To me, that's just storytelling. You use the past events of a character to inform how the character is now. I mean, that's just basic storytelling. So I don't know why they put such a big emphasis on that. Anyway, the basic premise of the setting and the plot, that sounds interesting. I'm not familiar with I've heard of Eric Kaneda, but I don't think I've actually read anything, and none of the other artists on here, their names I'm familiar with. So again, I'll have to take a look at the preview images that come out of this and see where it takes me. So one of the biggest names in comics, it says, Todd McFarlane, is launching a new series with co-writer Brian Holgan and artist Clayton Crane. As it says, this brilliantly written and stunningly illustrated 8-issue miniseries is titled Savior and hits shelves in April. This series is sure to be a new favorite for McFarlane fans and new readers alike. A man appears with no background, no memory. Okay, you can just stop right there because I hate those kind of stories. Hate them. There was a rash of those kind of stories last year. It may have been Image Expo titles, actually. Maybe not. But there were like all within a few months of each other. There was all these titles releasing, and I say all, but really it was probably like 3. But they were releasing, and that was pretty much the description of them. Character doesn't know who he is or why he's there, and needs to figure out what's going on. Yawn. Anyway, but this much is clear. This individual possesses certain powers, abilities that harken from the Old Testament. Okay. Could he possibly be this corrupted world's savior in the flesh, or will he be the world's undoing? Okay, that I can get behind. Kind of like that idea. Anyway, Sons of the Devil is Brian Buccellato and Tony Infante's horror story, psychological horror story about one man's discovery of familial blood ties to a cult. This book is a dark look at a blue-collar 25-year-old orphan who learns he is the son of a cult leader. Like True Detective and The Following, Sons of the Devil is an exploration into the dark side of human psychology. It's a grounded take on cults that balances the real world with the supernatural. It's gritty, character-driven, and tonally lays somewhere between Southern Bastards and Nailbiter, neither of which I've read, so that does nothing for me, although I have heard that Southern Bastards is pretty good, so I'm waiting for the trade on that. I do like the idea of an examination of a cult along with some supernatural elements. So I might be giving that a look. Brian Wood returns to the list with Starve, along with Danijel Zazelle and Dave Stewart. it says here, are cooking up a story set in the near future where celebrity chefs are idolized and reality television has taken a decidedly unsavory turn. So this is a world where chefs are practically royalty and access to them is the ultimate status symbol. Chef Gavin Cruikshank, back from a self-imposed exile, finds his little foodie television program, Starve, transformed into a gonzo arena sport where chefs slice and dice rare and endangered species for their super-rich patrons. Since his personal life is as much a shambles as his professional career, Chef Cruikshank works to repair his relationship with his grown daughter while dismantling the monstrosity that Starve has become. Yeah, don't really care. Wow, there's a lot of repeats on this list. The next two are... Yeah, next two are repeats. Anyway, Tadema is Emmy Lennox's book. This is a somewhat autobiographical book. Takes us along on her personal journey back to Japan in a touching and in-depth look at Japanese roots and cultural influences in this new graphic novel. Throughout her childhood, Emmy visited her grandmother in Japan frequently, but through the years of high school and after, she hadn't been back in nearly 12 years. Sadly, however, within those years, both her Japanese grandparents passed away. Tadema is a travelogue documenting a trip back to Japan with her mother for a memorial service to renew the Sabota, a wooden grave marker at her grandparents' tomb in Fukushima. Touching on Japanese spirituality and cultural differences, Tadema is more than a book about landmarks and foreign cuisine. It's about family, and that is a book I can get behind. So I will definitely be checking that one out. Although, I have to admit, here's a confession, comic book confession. I haven't read Emmytown. It's on my list, or it's on my bookshelf. I started reading it, and I couldn't continue with it. It wasn't intriguing enough to, or didn't capture my attention enough for me to keep going. But I keep meaning to get back to it because I like the idea of Emmytown. So I'm really looking forward to this new graphic novel by Emmy Lennox. The other repeat here, although I have to admit it's a good one because it's by Brian K. Vaughan. This is called We Stand on Guard, and Vaughan teams up with co-creator and artist Steve. Oh boy, I want to say Scrokey, who is a storyboard artist for The Matrix and Jupiter Ascending. This is a miniseries. We Stand on Guard is an action-packed military thriller set in the 22nd century. It follows a heroic band of Canadian civilians turned freedom fighters who take up arms against a violent invasion of their country by a technologically superior nation, the United States. Oh yeah, I'm going to have to buy this. Whether it's I pick up the miniseries or I get the eventual trade of this. I'm definitely going to read this one. And then finally, we have from James Robinson and Philip Tan. This is an all-new space opera series titled Heaven. Heaven introduces readers to a distant future where the forces of man and alien combined have used religion to conquer this universe and are now ready, about to invade the next one. Heaven itself, the good war, quote unquote, between man and angel will span galaxies and dimensions, building to a final conflict that threatens to negate all of reality itself. Along the way, many players on both sides of the war will be featured, soldiers, spies, and politicians, all with different goals and agendas, even as their two distinct and differing realities explode around them. So, like the McFarlane book, where you have the Old Testament type stuff as part of the story, as part of the world, I'm intrigued by this because I always had a soft spot for stories featuring angels and demons. So I'm intrigued by this. There's a lot of high concept here in this description. Unfortunately, high concept only gets you so far. You got to have the story grounded in something, in the characters especially. So there's got to be a touchstone there for us, the readers, to be able to go along in the ride. So I guess I'll have to see, but intriguing nonetheless. Finally, I want to end the episode with a little bit of news about something I just happened to stumble upon. Not quite sure now where I found out about it. But this is a documentary called She Makes Comics. This is done by Sequart, which does, a magazine. Apparently have done several documentaries, including Grant Morrison Talking with Gods, The Image Revolution, several others. But this one is she makes comics. I almost said she talks comics. She makes comics, and as it says here on the sequart.org website, if you go to sequart.org/movies, and then you can find all of the various movies. But here we go. She Makes Comics traces the fascinating history of women in the comics industry. Despite popular assumptions about the comics world, women have been writing, drawing, and reading comics since the medium's beginnings in the late 19th century. And today, there are scores of women involved in comics and its vibrant fan culture. Featuring dozens of interviews with such vital figures as Ramona Fradon, Trina Robbins, Joyce Farmer, Karen Berger, Kelly Sue DeConnick, and Becky Cloonan, the documentary is the first film to bring together the most influential women of the comics world. So there's also a trailer that you can watch, which was really interesting. So have a listen to that.
People are aware that there are women in comics, and there are more and more women in comics, but there have always been women in comics. There have been women in comics for decades.
During the 1950s and 1960s, the readership of comics was split 55% female and 45% male.
Our house was like a bedroom, and then the rest of the house was comics.
The more superheroes took hold, the less anything else got any priority.
So we sat down and we talked quite a bit about how we wanted to form a comic. Nobody had done women's bodies from a woman's point of view. The potential was there that comics could do anything. We decided to get even with men.
You're entering a golden age of breaking into comics if you're female.
And there are more women in comics than ever, and that's really exciting to see.
You can tell any kind of story in comics, and let's really try to do progressive material always.
Write stories for people. And if you have more women involved, you're probably going to have more women reading.
Female fandom has exploded.
There is a community out there. Just go in, dive in, head first. It's going to be awesome.
It's become more acceptable to be a woman and to go to a convention. I think the more women that come out and say, I'm interested in comics, and I'm not ashamed of that, the more women are like, oh, I'll take a look at this and I'll give it a try.
I'm an artist, and I don't do anything for anybody. It's me and the paper, and total honesty.
To bring all of these women together, these smart, creative, powerful women together, telling their stories, telling the history of women in comics, stands as such an amazing example to women out there, to girls out there, that there are a lot of women in this club, and that there's always room for more.
See, that's pretty intriguing, isn't it? I want to thank the fine folks at sequart.org for allowing me to play the audio of that trailer. But go check it out yourself. I'll have a link in the show notes. So this is directed by Marissa Stoddard, who's done several short films and also producing her first full-length feature. I'm not familiar with her work, but I'm really looking forward to watching this documentary. It actually came out in December 2014, And if you go to the She Makes Comics page at sequart.org, you can buy the DVD or the download, which is only $10. The DVD is $20. For $25, you get the DVD and the download. So I'm going to, I want to watch this. So however I need to do that, I need to figure out how to do it. So you should check that out, or I encourage you to check that out anyway. And that's all we have time for today as far as Breaking Late News. If you have any comments about the news stories or other information presented herein, please let me know. You can email me at longboxreview@gmail.com, or you can leave comments at the website longboxreview.com. Thanks for listening, everybody. Bye-bye.